Hi, this chapter had a very different type of pacing than the previous two, than the beginning of the flashback. It almost makes it feel unnatural in a way, because if you think about it, in the last two, we got introduced to Odin as a character, and then we also saw how he ended up getting two Scabbards, Denjiro and Kinemon, and in this chapter, he gets five Scabbards in one chapter. So I kind of want to know how much of the pacing of this chapter came out of a suggestion from an editor. Because I can totally see an editor going up to Oda and telling him, whatever you're going to do with this flashback, do it faster. So it's really the situation where Oda is kind of like doomed if he does, doomed if he doesn't. Because if he does this, then it just, I mean, people can complain and say, well, this feels very rushed. But then if he doesn't do it, some people can complain and say, this is taking forever. It just goes to show you, you can't please everybody.
We start off with a cover page with Queen, who was the manager of the Smile Factory, and she was the one who Frankie actually had to kiss back in Dressrosa, so she would shut up and not interfere in the fight between him and Senor Pink. So maybe she learned this kissing technique thing from back then. The good thing about this is that since it's not Lola who's responsible for kissing these Marines, that means that Lola could still be married to Lucky Roo. That theory could still work out now.
The page actually gets me to wonder if Vito is hiding from being kissed or if he's hiding from the Marines. Or both. Odin is leaving Hakumai to go to Kuri because he wants to meet Ashura Doji, and then we find out that Orochi is already a snake, both figuratively and literally, because I think he used his devil fruit power to trash that room and have Odin take the blame for it. And then he also blames Odin for stealing money. And so I actually thought, because of what we got in the previous chapter, that we were going to see Orochi's transition into being a full-blown villain, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. It just seems like even back then, he was already a sleazebag. But yeah, because of what we saw in the previous chapter, how he was kind of inept and he lacked confidence, I thought, oh, okay, we're gonna see Oda take him from point A to point B. But no, he was already crap.
Now, I saw a comment about how in the previous chapter, the guy with the candle crown, waving that wand, talking about the legend of the White Boar, and warning people about Odin being cursed, is actually Hold'em. And I knew there was something very familiar about him that I just couldn't put my finger on. But yeah, him being Hold'em explains it. Just makes total sense.
After Odin leaves Hakumai, this is the point where Oda has to introduce a new format for the pacing of this chapter to make sense. So what he does is he introduces the format of a logbook and has Odin record all of his like mini adventures in it so that the snippets or the montage, whatever you want to call it, makes sense and actually flows within that format of the logbook. However, because of the creation of the logbook, it kind of got me to think, does that logbook still exist? And if so, where is it? Because I would really want to read it. I would want the characters to find it so that we can find out what's in it. I mean, because if he kept a logbook during the time that he was under Whitebeard and under Roger, that book must be filled with juicy deets. Then we get to the part of Odin getting the Scabbards, and the first two that we find in this chapter are Izo, who eventually becomes a commander under Whitebeard, and Okiku. We find out that the two of them are brothers, and this pretty much confirms that the character that we saw back in chapter 943 during the flashback was actually Izo, not Okiku. However, I think Okiku is kind of considered a scabbard, because by the end of the chapter, Odin says, like, you know, you guys, you'll be my scabbards, you'll be my samurai.
Before I go on, I just want to give a shout out to Reddit for this tidbit. So the name Hanayagi is actually the name of a kabuki school of dance that was founded during the Edo period. I mean, like most of Wano is Edo period based, right? But as of right now, the Hanayagi school is considered to be one of the largest and most popular schools of classical dance in Japan. So the fact that Izo and Kiku have that kabuki dance theme kind of goes along very well with the designs of other scabbards such as Raizo and Kanjiro, because they both have designs that are based on kabuki theater costumes.
Now, we do know that eventually Izo has to part ways with the Scabbards to work under Whitebeard. So I'm beginning to think of two scenarios. Number one is that during the time that Odin was under Whitebeard, maybe Izo was there with him, and maybe Izo formed a relationship with Whitebeard, and then ultimately that led him to just want to stay and be a commander. Or it could have been this thing where in order for Odin to leave from Whitebeard's crew to Roger's crew. Maybe Whitebeard asked Odin for a son in return, like, kind of like, Big Mom, you can't leave unless you kind of, give me something in return. So maybe Izo volunteered to stay in Odin's place so that Odin could leave Whitebeard's crew and go with Roger. Then we find out about how Odin meets Kanjiro in Kibi. And what I appreciate out of these snippets is that, if you notice, I think Oda is introducing characters without actually introducing them. And what I mean is this. So when it comes to Izo and Okiku, right? He talks about, there's a mention of their father being arrested. And so it got me to think, who is this father and why was he arrested? What was the specific reason for his arrest? And then in Kanjiro's little section, like, it talks about Kanjiro being persecuted. So I was wondering, like, who is persecuting Kanjiro, right? Like, I think those are important people that, Oda might reveal in the future. In Raizo's section, it talks about him being heartbroken by a kunoichi, and my first thought was like, that's not Shinobu, is it? Then it was also stated that Raizo was part of the Oniwa Banshu, which we know will be important, or kind of already is. Plus, we know that he had a rivalry with Fukurokuju of the Oniwa Banshu. Remember the forehead guy? So I feel like all these vague mentions related or concerning the Scabbards could have some weight in the story later on. Like these vague mentions of these characters that are part of the Scabbards' lives, or that were part of the Scabbards' lives. Then we get this panel of Ashura Doji drinking snake blood. And I think Oda, is deliberately framing Ashura Doji as kind of like, maybe not the leader of the Scabbards, but one of the main components of the group. I think in terms of strength, I would say right now it looks like it's... Because remember, Kaido tried to recruit Ashura Doji. Like, at one point, I think he says, like, I've been asking you, like, you want to join my crew? And Ashura Doji's like, nope. So if Kaido's asking him to join, he's pretty formidable. And so I think it's between him, like, being the strongest of the Scabbards, and Nekomamushi and Inuarashi. I don't know about Kawamatsu, though. But yeah, I think, like, Oda is framing those three at least, Ashura Doji, Nekomamushi, and Inuarashi to be the strongest of the group, not including Odin. And I don't know what happens to Denjiro. Then again, Kawamatsu was also in prison, which means that Kaido was trying to break his will to get him to join his crew also. So he must be pretty strong too. And I do think that it's noteworthy to mention that it took Odin a whole night to take care of Ashura Doji and his subordinates. And even then, Odin seems pretty roughed up. Like, he's bleeding. He has arrows sticking out of his back. So I think that speaks a little bit about how strong Ashura Doji kind of is, in comparison to the rest of the Scabbards. And I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that Odin is actually a D, because in this chapter he says something that is so Luffy-like and Roger-like, which is that when he's in Kuri, he says, "Oh, so this is a place that I can't leave? That's the kind of rule I hate the most." That's something that, like, Luffy and Roger would say. It's because it's against freedom. Now, during that scene, there's a very small panel of where the Scabbards are running to meet up with Odin to try and help him. And if you look at that panel, you see Izo carrying Kiku on his back. But if you look at what their weapons are, Izo actually has a katana, the sword, and Kiku seems to be holding a pistol. So I find it interesting that currently in the present, like, Okiku is the one with the katana, she's the samurai, and then Izo's the one who uses the pistols, as we saw during Marineford. So I find it interesting that they end up exchanging weapons. And so Odin defeats Ashura Doji, cleans up Kuri, and eventually is named Daimyo of Kuri, as we knew he would be. We don't get to see the construction of Odin's castle, we just see the giant fortress already built. I believe, like, there's like a waterfall running in front of it, which I think should be the water path that Kawamatsu uses to escape, along with Hiyori during the fire, after Odin gets killed. So the news about Odin's feat spreads. We get shots of Yasui reacting to the news. We get a shot of Otsuru reacting to the news. And we also get a shot from Ringo. And we get to see two characters from the back. And of course, I'm referring to Onimaru, the fox, who can transform into Gyukimaru, which was the bridge keeper that fought Zorro, and his master, Ushimaru Shimotsuki. Now, a lot of people seem to believe that Ushimaru is related to Zorro
in some degree. That's a pretty prevalent theory, mainly because I think it was mentioned that Ushimaru was a master swordsman. Now, what's interesting here is that if you look at what Ushimaru is wearing, you can see that he has like a bull on his robes. In Japanese, it's actually an ox demon called the Ushi-Oni, right? So this ox demon was depicted having the torso of a spider during the Edo period. And in mythology, these demons are supposed to be very brutal. They're supposed to spit poison and like to kill and eat humans. So this can mean that Oshimaru actually has the Ushi-Oni mythical Zoan devil fruit, and that back then, like, he could transform into this creature. Which is funny if you think about like Naruto comparisons, because the fox, which is Gyukimaru, you got the fox there and the ox. But also, funnily enough, Ushi-Oni can also be called Gyuki, which is actually the name of an attack that Zorro uses. So when we think about Zorro, like we make the connection with him and demons, right? We have like the Ashura and Enma theme. So in that small panel, Oda just gave us another connection between Zorro and Ushimaru.
So everybody's happy, and then Odin declares that the 7 will be his samurai. And then there's a time jump. There's a 6-year time skip, during which, unfortunately, God Valley takes place. So Oda decided to skip God's Valley. And I think maybe it's because that flashback, or that part of the flashback, is just super important to something that happens at the end of the series. So he didn't want to give it away this soon. The thing here, though, is that we have a 6-year gap of not knowing what happened. So who knows what happened during the 6-year period? All we know is that after the God's Valley incident, the survivors of the rocks started recruiting. And we get this panel of Whitebeard, young Big Mom, Shiki in the back, Kaido in the back. And then there's another character who could be Captain John. It could be Silver Axe, or it could be Ochoku. We don't know. But we do know that eventually Odin gets picked up by Whitebeard. So we should be seeing Whitebeard enter the flashback very soon. We see Kawamatsu find Inuarashi and Nekomamushi washed up on the shore. It seemed like they shipwrecked there in Wano, because they have a little ship that's just completely busted up. But I wonder if they came from Zou, or if they were being chased. Because ultimately, I think that, if Oda wants to, and hopefully I think he should spend a chapter on both of these characters joining Odin. Maybe we get to learn more about the Minks, and maybe even perhaps about the secret of Sunisha.
I remember in chapter 920, Inuarashi says that when they first arrived in Wano, him and the cat were beaten and discriminated against because they looked different. But that Odin saved them, essentially, and fought for them, and told the other citizens of Wano that they should be ashamed for treating other people so poorly just because of their appearance. So that's another similarity between Odin and Luffy, because Luffy, he threw all of the prejudice that Chopper had experienced out of the window by accepting him for who he was and asking him to join his crew. It's kind of like the same dynamic I feel like we're going to see between the cat and the dog and Odin as with Luffy and Chopper.
That's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. I thought the chapter was okay. A complete shift in terms of the pacing, but okay nonetheless. Thanks a bunch. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Comment down below with your thoughts and theories about the chapter, and I'll catch you guys later. Take care. Bye.